After the interview. This module provides an overview of critical steps that oral historians should take as soon as the interview concludes. These best practices should help enhance the quality of the project, facilitate the writing and processing, and preserve and provide access to the collections in a timely manner. Be sure to send copies of the oral history to the narrator as soon as you are able so that they may review the content and suggest any changes, revisions, corrections, or omissions. 1. Make copies. Oral historians and archivists should ensure that protection of the original recorded materials begins immediately afterward. Triplicate the recordings and back them up on external hard drives. 2. Document the methodology. Interviewers should document their preparation and methods to provide to the archive responsible for preserving the interviews and making them accessible. 3. Additional documents. Collect all relevant additional documents, such as photographs or other records. Archivists should make copies of these documents accessible to researchers in addition to the recordings. 4. Storage. The recordings of the interviews should be stored, processed, refreshed, and accessed according to established archival standards designated for the media format used. Whenever possible, all efforts should be made to preserve electronic files in formats that are cross-platform and non-proprietary. Finally, the obsolescence of all media formats should be assumed and planned for. Audio files should be saved as WAV files, and video should be recorded as MP4 files for the most current formats. 5. Accessibility. To increase accessibility of the oral histories, oral historians and/or archivists should include transcriptions, indices, time tags, descriptions, abstracts, and/or other guides. 6. Preservation. Institutions that are responsible for preserving oral histories and making them accessible should honor all agreements made between the oral historian and the narrator, including restrictions and distribution. 7. Prior agreements. The repository should comply to the extent to which it is aware with the letter and the spirit of the interviewee's agreement with the interviewer and sponsoring institution. If written documentation, such as consent and release forms, does not exist, then the institution should make a good faith effort to contact interviewees regarding their intent. When media become available that did not exist at the time of the interview, those working with oral history should carefully assess the applicability of the release to the new formats and proceed or not accordingly. 8. Intellectual honesty. All those who use oral history interviews should strive for intellectual honesty and the best application of the skills of their discipline. They should avoid stereotypes, misrepresentations, and manipulations of the narrator's words. This includes foremost striving to retain the integrity of the narrator's perspective, recognizing the subjectivity of the interview, and interpreting and contextualizing the narrative according to the professional standards of the applicable scholarly disciplines. Finally, if a project deals with community history, the interviewer should be sensitive to the community, taking care not to reinforce thoughtless stereotypes. Interviewers should strive to make the interviews accessible to the community and, where appropriate, to include representatives of the community in public programs or presentations of the oral history material. Leave a few business cards, flyers, or invitation letters to share with other potential participants. Many oral history projects rely on building professional reputations, establishing rapport in a community, and networking. Making good impressions during interviews usually leads to more interviews. Develop questions as the project evolves. Modify the questions for each narrator. During the pre-interview stage, develop more personalized questions to ask narrators based on their experiences and the context. Learn from follow-up questions. As an oral history project progresses, reflect after each interview, and as you learn more about the topic, develop new questions based on insights. Take note of follow-up questions and consider including them in other interviews. Look for emergent themes. The beauty of oral history is that it sheds light on topics in new ways. What are some similarities across interviews? What is unique about each one? Consider keeping a running document that tracks themes in the research. Reflect, write, revise. Reflect on each interview in writing. Keep a journal in which you reflect on interviews and identify successes and areas for improvement in your interview techniques. Abstract the interview immediately after its conclusion. Write about any difficulties, surprises, unexpected challenges. Which questions worked well? Which ones did not work well? What could you have done to avoid problems? Given the opportunity to do a follow-up interview, what would you want to know or ask? What lessons can be applied to future interviews? These writing exercises will be incredibly useful to you as you continue to grow and develop as an oral historian and as your project grows and develops. These writings can also be useful for future articles, assignments, research writing, essays, book projects, etc. They can also be used to promote the project. Writing a short description of the interview can generate more interest in the project. It's good practice. The indices and research themes list will help make the revision process efficient and effective. Instead of waiting until you begin to interpret the oral histories for your research project, set aside a short bit of time to identify the most significant and insightful themes after each interview. This will not only facilitate the writing process later, but it will help you continuously improve your interview questions and interview style. After you make copies of the recordings, do a free write in which you discuss the interview. What seemed most significant about the interview? What parts do you remember being exceptionally interesting? Being able to locate potential highlight clips will help you out later as you make the oral histories more accessible. While these activities might seem like they take an unnecessary amount of time, it's absolutely time well spent. Adding to a research themes list after each interview will help you make connections among narrators in the project, compare and contrast, and synthesize the project. You will thank your future self when you begin to write and interpret the collections. Listening to our interviews can be as equally grueling as it can be rewarding if we learn from each interview and continue to learn and grow as an oral historian. Pro tip: everyone hates the sound of their own voice. Get over it. When you listen to the interviews, you will notice what worked well as areas for improvement. You will regret not asking a follow-up question or interrupting, but you will apply those lessons to subsequent interviews. We learn oral history by doing. Keep trying. The thank you card has become a bit of a lost art, but narrators will appreciate the thoughtfulness and the extra effort. In your thank you letter, comment about one or two particularly interesting or significant moments in the interview for which you are especially grateful for the insights. Acknowledge what a privilege and an honor it is for someone to share their history with you. Be sure to remind them if you are still trying to locate additional narrators. If you have not yet provided a copy of the interview, transcript, or other materials, give them a date by which to expect it and follow through with it. Pro tip: never make a promise that you cannot keep. Finally, offer them the opportunity to contact you if they need anything at all. Creating and editing highlight clips. Most people are unfamiliar with oral history and are sometimes reluctant to volunteer to participate in a project that they do not fully understand. After you have done a couple of interviews, consider editing short 5-minute video clips, with the permission of the narrator, to share with potential narrators. Video will help people understand not just what oral history looks like, but also it helps people see the value in storytelling. It will help them get a sense of their experiences in a greater context too. These video compilations, in addition to an invitation letter that clearly articulates the purposes of the project and outlines expectations of narrators, will help grow the audience of the project and continue to expand your community. Some oral historians use advertisements and hang flyers in relevant communities, but the power of accessible oral histories cannot be understated. These editing clips should also be deposited in the archives so they can be included in the digital collections. Short, accessible clips can generate interest in the collection. Networking and building community. Having a contact in a community of interest can be vitally important for launching an oral history project, developing professional relationships, as well as building trust and rapport. To establish a professional reputation and grow your network, consider doing an oral history interview with a leader or a respected person in a community. This person can help recruit more participants by introducing you to other potential narrators and vouching for your professionalism. Oral history projects often grow through word of mouth. Making great impressions on the communities you're documenting can lead to a snowball effect. That is, when one interview leads to more and then exponentially grows. Process immediately. The sooner you process an interview, the better. Try to work on the interview to prepare for archiving as soon as you complete. You would be surprised how much you forget as you start working on other projects. Write about the interview immediately, making substantial notes, commentaries, references, reflection, and analysis. As you listen back to the interview, make descriptive time indices at frequent time variables. Every 5 minutes is usually sufficient. Pro tip: mark each question you ask with the time indicator 2 in the written transcript. Scan all documents and save all files. To prepare the collection for archiving, organize all accompanying documents, most important being the signed copy of the informed consent document. You can also include other sources, such as photographs, newspapers, journals, etc. You may also deposit all the documents you have compiled about an interview as well, including time indices, metadata, or transcripts. You should have already been in communication with an archivist, so at this point, set up a time to meet with the appropriate archivist to deposit the collection. Make sure that the archive has the resources to preserve the collection and will grant access to the files digitally. Ask for a reasonable timetable on when they expect to have the materials processed.